So, you know how you always see those things online, or if you live in a city, you'll see these. They're called hostile architecture, where you have they'll put a row of concrete spikes underneath a bridge or an overpass, or they'll have uh bike racks in the most random spots, or benches that have an armrest right in the center of it. And they're there essentially to keep homeless people from sleeping there, even though the city doesn't want to actually say that, but that's why they're there. Well, some places have decided that they're going to skip the subtlety altogether and they're just going to go straight to banning homeless people, apparently. And one of those places is a place called Yorkville, which is a suburb of Chicago, so kind of near where I live, generally speaking. And basically, they approved a new city ordinance there, which says that essentially they're going to ban people from sleeping in public places, all right? And on top of that, they're going to charge people on a first offense with $75 fine, which can then for each offense get more expensive and then eventually end up at a $750 fine for sleeping in public places, you know, because homeless people don't have anywhere else to sleep. They're homeless, right? And so, on top of that, by the way, these entitled idiots who passed this ordinance had the audacity to include the Bill of Rights as a defense of this, which again wrote it down here. According to the part that they quoted in the article I read, it is the right to use and move freely in public spaces in the same manner as any other person without discrimination on the basis of their housing status, and the right to reasonable expectation of privacy in their personal property. Well, the first of many issues here is that they don't have personal property. They're homeless, okay? If they had personal property, they'd be living there, all right? Secondly, okay, the discrimination against people based on their housing status is exactly what this is, okay? People, this may come as a surprise, I guess, to people like these aldermen who passed this thing, who probably don't live outside their gated community, alright? This may come as a shocker, but people tend not to like sleeping on park benches and underneath overpasses, okay? The homeless people, usually speaking, I'm sure there's outliers, but generally speaking, homeless people don't want to be homeless and aren't having a fun time doing that, okay? They're not choosing to be sleeping on the street, all right? So, so basically, you're only discriminating against the homeless people, okay? People with houses aren't being affected by this at all right? And they know that too. These people who pass this, because they're not trying to solve any homeless problem. They just don't want to see the homeless people, okay? There's still gonna be homeless people. They don't care that there's homeless people. They just don't want to see them, all right? Out of sight, out of mind. That's why they have the whole um hostile architecture thing, because all these people in charge of the cities, they don't want to take the time to actually, build homeless shelters or address economic issues that might be causing people to be homeless, or whatever other problems are going on in the area. They don't want to address that. That costs time and money. It's a lot cheaper to just, stick a bike rack underneath an overpass, or to, you know, stick hollow out the bottoms of benches so you can't sleep on it comfortably, or do shit like this where you fine people for sleeping in public places, which I'm sure they can come up with any number of bullshit to try to come up with this. Some of them, they're like, well, it's going to cause a number of health issues, which it does for the homeless people, I'm sure, because they can't afford to go to the hospital or afford insurance, given that they're homeless. Which brings me to the next issue here, which is you're going to fine homeless people who don't have money, which is why they're most likely homeless, all right? I'm sure there's other reasons people can be homeless, but odds are pretty solid that if a person is living on the street and they're sleeping underneath an overpass or they're sleeping on the side of the road, probably don't have a lot of money to throw around, all right? And a $75 fine is not going to be on the top list of priorities that they're going to need to afford, okay? You know, if they got $75, it's probably going to food or drinks or literally anything that's not a fine put out by some dickheads in an office, all right? So, and I can go on about it all I want, but like, that's the everyone knows, everyone can see through it, okay? They just want to not have the homeless people in their area. They don't want to see it in their area. They don't want to solve the problem, okay? They don't want to build shelters so the homeless people can sleep in there and not be on the street. They just want them out of their city, okay? And if they can't have them out of their city, then they want to milk as much money out of them as humanly possible, which is an abhorrent thing to do. But yeah, it's hollow, it's abysmal, and you shouldn't just let people get away with this shit in the government, okay? Realistically, is anything gonna happen? If people send complaints to the city, nothing's gonna happen. Because the government doesn't give a shit about the homeless, okay? They don't give a shit about the bottom rung of society, okay? That's just how it is. So, it sucks. Those people who passed this bill, they suck, and it's not anything uncommon, okay? The homeless people never get treated well. That's just how it is. So, yeah.